The same people that are covering it up are the same people that are doing it. I'm
Yeah.
talking about big tech. I'm talking about big tech. And this is why I'm censored so viciously, is because the very mediums that I'm using to get my message out are completely corrupt. Completely corrupt. I get censored up one side and down the other like you wouldn't believe. Even on the free speech absolutists website, X, I get censored on there all the time. I mean, the dude is just a liar. And yeah, so I mean, it makes sense that the same people that are covering it up would be the same ones doing it, right? My research indicates that all roads lead to Silicon Valley. You can trace the evolution of the project physically as it moves across the country and embeds itself in Silicon Valley. It started in the Northeast with Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a lot of other old, Northeast establishment firms and scientific organizations and things. These the GE scientists were involved in all that. Langmuir, Schaefer, and Vonnegut. I go into all this in the book, and there was also, a secret project going on with the federal government. That was the actual project that was headed by von Karman, and had to do with Teller and von Neumann and all this kind of stuff. They created something called the Scientific Advisory Board that was tasked with creating this secret second generation weather modification project. This was their mandate in classified documents of the time. They came out later, and I have it all in the book. But it started in the Northeast, and then they found that their environment in the Northeast was a little crowded, and they needed more room to conduct like larger field experiments. And the first of those were done in Texas with these space charge experiments. And then so that's going down into Texas, the home of the Bush family. That's the area that they inhabit, the Northeast in Texas. And I have, just scads of information and scads of connections to the Bush family in my book. So anyway, so it starts in the Northeast, goes down to Texas, and the next thing you know, it's over in New Mexico at the Langmuir School of Atmospheric Physics or something like that. That was established. Vincent Langmuir, he was the first scientist to win the first industrial scientist to win the Nobel Prize. He won it in chemistry. He was a GE scientist. But they named a laboratory after him down there around the University of New Mexico. Today it's called New Mexico Tech. It's had different names in the past. But on this Mount Baldy, they built an observatory, and they had like a wire strung across a chasm, and they electrified the wire in the vein of a space charge experiment. And I don't want to get into what space charge, but you'll sort of understand from what I'm saying here. And then they generated huge clouds of particulate matter to go and blow over this area with this electrified wire unsheathed with direct current, so that there would be like an electrical physical effect around the wire. It creates like areas of different polarities and things. But yeah, they were running like large, I would say medium scale operations in the vein of what I call the New Manhattan Project. See, because this second generation weather modification project is basically the combination of particulate matter and electromagnetic energy. That's the electromagnetic energy aspect of it sets it apart from what we call the conventional cloud seeding industry, which also came into being right after World War II. But anyway, so you see it go from the Northeast down to Texas, down to over to New Mexico, and then it goes to Silicon Valley because that's where all the high technology was with Fairchild Semiconductor, whose primary customer was the United States government and building weapon systems and semiconductors used for weapon systems and all this, because that's what this whole thing is. It was developed as a weapon system, to control the weather against, like, conceivably against a foreign enemy. So even if you had knowledge of it at the time, I mean, there were probably people who had knowledge of it, and they're like, yeah, we're building a weapon system we're going to use against enemies in foreign lands. The only thing wrong with that is that in 1966, they turned all this stuff against us. Did I say 1966? 1996, when the large-scale domestic spraying operations began, that's when they turned all this stuff against us and started doing it domestically. So, I don't even have beef with Silicon Valley or the weapons systems developers there, such as Fairchild. Well, Fairchild's long gone, but there's been all kinds of high technology weapons system developments going on in Silicon Valley. So and then you see also Lawrence Livermore National Labs right here in the Bay Area. They've been the premier buyer of supercomputers forever. So supercomputers are a necessary component of this weapon system. And they've always been at the forefront of buying and developing supercomputers. Not only that, they've also been at the forefront of atmospheric modeling. Lawrence Livermore National Labs, they had something called the PCMDI. Now, I'm going to try to get this acronym right. PCMDI, Project for Climate Model D, I forget what the D is, and intercomparison.
Wait, there you go. Wait. Program for Climate Model Diagnosis and Intercomparison, right?
Yeah, see, this is what I have to deal with, Seth. What I mean? Like I've got just like thousands of acronyms I'm supposed to know. What I mean?
I can't still remember what ASAP means. ASAP. Just a quick question, or more of a comment, and then it's a very specific question I have is that one thing that I've learned in my research is there are layers and layers of deception, obviously, and so. One thing is just that Silicon Valley, and also a lot of the universities and the research programs, in my understanding, these are basically just fronts for the military-industrial complex, right? So, we're sold this story of these unicorn companies, of the Facebook that started the day after DARPA's LifeLog shut down, right? We're sold this information. I think they've been really clever with their ability to build and actually build and distribute and use these weapons systems against their own people. But it's done, if you look, trace a lot of Epstein network, right? It's done through, college laboratories. It's done through quote unquote public companies. And so when you say, oh, it goes to Silicon Valley, it's like the simplistic way of thinking, oh, why would Mark Zuckerberg be one to spray us? It's like, no, you're missing the whole point. If Silicon Valley is just this front, it's just this facade for the military industrial complex, which is then used to turn against us. I mean, would you agree, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what my research indicates, is that all this was done largely, it was built over the decades through public funding as just like, this is weather research, it was compartmentalized. So you could have pretty much all of it compartmentalized and just tell that one person who's doing what they do to, only what they need to know. They don't know what the whole picture is, and they don't know that in the future is going to be used against us. You know what I mean? So the whole thing is compartmentalized, and people have this conception of Silicon Valley as, oh, well, it's the home of Facebook and Apple Computer and stuff. Well, this is the public facade of Silicon Valley. They grew up as a weapons system developer. All of Silicon Valley, it started with Fairchild Semiconductor, whose primary customer was the United States military. That's what, and then there were a whole bunch of firms that basically spun out of that created Silicon Valley. This is how the whole thing got started. And so there's just tons of connections between today's military and Silicon Valley. And so what we're looking at, as far as who's doing it, is a combination of the old CIA, Bush, Rockefeller deep state that built this thing and big tech.
If you are curious about investing in crypto, Bitcoin, stablecoins, USAT, gold-backed stablecoins, whatever it is, if you've felt like it's a little bit too complicated, which it oftentimes can be, Rumble Wallet is a really easy way to get started. So with Rumble Wallet, you can buy, you can sell, you can manage your crypto all in one place. The app is really easy, very straightforward. And what makes it unique is that you can also use it to tip creators like me. So you can actually, if you're on Rumble, you can do a tip using your Rumble Wallet, which is kind of cool because I'm all about alternative bartering systems and everything. I think crypto is one that gives you some way of kind of being outside of one of the main systems, but also just a way of supporting the Freedom First community that we've built here on Rumble. So if you want to get started, it's really simple. Just download the Rumble Wallet app, sign up with your existing Rumble account. You don't need a new login or anything. There's a few security steps you follow, then you're up in minutes. So you can start with just a few bucks, and it has MoonPay built in, so you can easily use your You can buy crypto using credit card, debit card, bank wire, etc. So if you've been thinking about the advantages of crypto, download Rumble Wallet now. So there's a link in my bio you can click on. You can also search for Rumble Wallet in the App Store. And I've also got a QR code. So if you're watching on a TV or a laptop, just scan that QR code. It takes you right there as well. So download it today, give it a try, move your assets, where they belong, in your hands, outside of the government's control. Which again, whether that's crypto for you or for me, it's these chunks of metal I can bury in the ground, whatever it is. If you're a crypto person, highly recommend you check out Rumble Wallet.